Hello students, I am here to give you a brief tutorial on some of the tools and commands that you can use inside AutoCAD for your first activity coming up. That's going to be our layers and title block. So I'm going to go through about 8 different tools or commands that you are able to use. Go ahead and follow along on your AutoCAD basic commands sheet and fill in when you hear me talk about certain commands that you need to use. Alright, so first, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to talk about the basic way to use AutoCAD. Now, you guys have been working on some other assignments so far, but I want to give you some tips to help you be able to draft a little bit faster. So the first one I want to give you is just basic using a command and then exiting that command. So any of these commands up here we can click and we can use them, and sometimes it will be advantageous for us to actually stop using those commands. So for example, what I'm going to show you is over in some blank space here. I'm going to select the line command, and using my command line it asks me to specify a first point and asks me to specify a next point. And I can just draw right around, no problem, whatever it may be. But sometimes I want to be done using a certain command. So there are 2 different ways that you can do this. One way is you can right click and you can either hit enter or cancel, and that will either enter the value that you have inputted or and end the command, or it'll cancel the current value. So at this point I could use either. So if I click enter or cancel, I'll be outside the command, and you can see my cursors turn back to a little T with a square box inside. Another way I could do that is by selecting the command, moving around, and on the keyboard, the escape key, you can press the escape key to also get out of a command. So there are 2 different ways for you to do that. Alright, moving on over, what I want to show you next is an incredibly powerful tool, and it is called trim. So what I want to do here is I'm going to show you kind of the step-by-step commands on how to use the trim command. So I have a rectangle here, and the rectangle has one line drawn through it. Don't really worry about what this is. It's just a random object I drew, but sometimes you might want to get rid of some lines at certain intersections. So for example, we have an intersection here and here. Maybe as we're drawing this, we need to get rid of this little extension above the rectangle and the extension below the rectangle. So to do this, we're just going to go up to the trim command. It is in the modify panel, and you're just going to left select it, and you can see that it's now active in our command line, and it says select objects or select all. I'm going to give you a tip that makes using the command line in our class really easy. So once you select that command line and your cursor turns to just a box, on your mouse what you want to do is just right click anywhere in blank space. So I'm going to right click anywhere. When that happens, it activates the second part of this command, and it's kind of a shortcut. And now what I can do is actually put my cursor over the line that I want to get rid of, and it even gives me a preview of what I'm getting rid of. So in this case, if I put my cursor here, I'd be getting rid of the top extension, or the middle, or the bottom extension. So I'm going to get rid of both the top and the bottom. To do that, I'm just going to left click once on both of those. Again, when I'm done with the command, I can hit escape. Alright, our next command, I just have a line here. And this is going to be very useful for drawing walls in our AutoCAD program. This command, what it's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to copy a line and immediately reproduce that line at a specified distance. And that is going to be in the modify panel again, and it's going to be called offset. And it's in the bottom right hand corner, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. So I'm going to click offset, and you can see here offset in the command line asks us, okay, well, specify the offset distance, or it gives us some other options. Not too worried about that. Here, inside of the less than and greater than symbols, it tells us what our current offset is set at. It might be different for you. For right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say I want to create this line, a copy of it, above the original line, and I'm going to put that at a distance of 2. So I'm going to select 2 and hit enter. And again, it gives me the little square box. I'm going to left click the line, and I'm going to put my cursor, you can see now, if I zoom out, before I click, I can actually move my cursor above or below the line, and it'll give me a preview of where it's going to go. So I'm going to put my cursor above it, and I'm going to select or left click, and that will place that line right there. So that's the offset tool. You can use that for other objects of tool as well, like squares and circles. All right, moving on over. So right here, again, random object. Uh, don't really worry too much about what it is. But what I'm going to do is now is I'm going to show you the select tool. So the select tool is something inherent on the actual cursor itself in utilizing your keyboard. There are two different ways to select. So the first way to select is going to be left clicking once, and you get this little square icon that pops up, and then dragging to the right. And when you do this, you drag to the right, you will get a blue box. And you can see here as you move your cursor over it, what you're going to select actually kind of becomes a little bit darker. So in this case, if I want to select the entire thing, I can move a blue box over the whole thing, and the lines become a little bit darker. The usefulness of the left click and drag right part of the select tool is you have to have the entire thing selected for it to actually select. So in this case, if you see I move over, right now I've only selected completely 4 lines on the inside. Even though I've encompassed this entire line, this is actually a square, so it's not selecting the whole thing because I haven't selected the whole square. But once I move all the way over, you can see I've selected now the entire square. To kind of give you that idea again, if I left click and move and select, I've only highlighted these 3 lines. Another way is I can left click and I can drag to the left. Now that is a green box, ladies and gentlemen, and all I have to do with this one is have the green box pretty much selecting part of whatever I want, and it will select the whole thing. So you can see here I'm only selecting part of each line, just the bottoms and bottom of the rectangle. I can click and I have the entire object selected. So both of those, two different ways to select. They do have their pros and cons. Won't go into too much right now, but when we get into our architecture unit, sure will. All right, our next command that we're going to use in our first activity is going to be the move command. And our move command is in the modify panel, top left-hand corner of the modify panel. We're going to select move with a left click on the mouse, and you can see it says select the object. So in this case, I want to move this circle from the left rectangle to the right rectangle. So first I'm just going to left click the object, and if you see here, it still is asking me to select the objects. Well, that's because I can select multiple objects I want and move them at the same time. Well, once I'm done selecting the objects, or this is the only one I want, what I can do is I can either right click or hit enter on the keyboard. Both of these will tell the move command I'm ready to move on. So I'm going to right click, and it asks us next, select a base point. So pretty much what the base point is it's going to be somewhere on the object where it's going to allow me to move from one place to another. So for this example, if I say I click the top of the circle, you can see wherever I'm moving it, it's selecting by the top. On the other side, what I can do is if I select the move command, select the object, right click, I don't even have to select the object. I can even select somewhere over here. And you can see here it's moving based on that point I selected it. So your selection doesn't even have to be on the object itself. And I can click and I can move it into that box. So sometimes you can even use snaps to do this. So I'm going to select an object, right click, and I'm going to select its center. And then I can move the object based on its center. So I can use the move command in a couple different ways, and the cursor itself actually does not have to be on the object when I move it. All right, our next one. There's going to be times when we are drawing, or especially our floor plans, we're going to have to label out certain things. So to be able to label out, for example, this is what we call a outlet. This is actually specifically a ceiling outlet. So this is where you'd have power coming from your ceiling. You can either install a light there or install a ceiling fan. So you want to tell that to the people that are working on this house, that this is a ceiling outlet, and they know where to place it then on the ceiling. So in this case, what I'm going to go up to the annotation panel, and I'm going to select the text tool. So you can see here there are two different ways to select the text tool. I can select the A, which would select what's called a multi-line text, or I can click down in this little arrow, and it gives me the option to either do a multi-line text or a single line. The difference is exactly what the name says. A single line, I'm only going to be typing on one line. If I want to type, say, a couple sentences or a paragraph, I would use the multi-line text. So in this case, it doesn't really matter which one I select, but I'm just going to select one. And you can see here the cursor comes out, and it has this little ABC. I'm going to turn off the dynamic input here so we don't have to see that anymore. Alright, so now I have my ABC here, and I want to label this as a ceiling outlet. So I'm going to click, and I'm just going to drag out a box. The little text tool comes up, and I can use a keyboard. I can type in ceiling outlet, and say I'll put that it is 120 volts. Now, there's a couple different things that we can do here. Once we type it out, you can see here it's still activated. I can highlight this, and then I can go over where the annotation, it says annotation right here. I can change the actual text height. So say I want this at 1 inch. Now, it looks really big, but I click out, and you can see here that, okay, maybe this is not as big as I want it to be. I can always just adjust it with these arrows. I can always go back and double click it, and when I double click it, I can eventually highlight it and I can change it. So maybe that's a little bit too big. We'll go to 0.25. And you can see here I have my ceiling outlet text. I can click on the text, and I can even move the text by selecting this box. I can change the size of it. So if I want it to be on multiple lines, I could move that arrow in. If I want it to be on one line, I can move that arrow out. So that's our text tool. Another tool that we're going to get really used to is something called our layers. Our layers are a place where we can actually manage all the different information in our drawings. So for example, I am right now, if we look, I am on the 0 layer. This is just a generated layer by Autocad. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into my layer properties, and I'll show you how to do this later. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a layer. And I'm going to call this an outlet layer. And I'm even going to change the color to a nice red color. I'm going to get out of my layers. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a different layer. Think of it like different sheets of a piece of paper, or almost like clear overhead sheets. You can put text on one and text on the other, and you can take them away, or you can put them back, and it looks like they're on the same place. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to move this to the outlet layer. Now you can see it's on the outlet layer, and it's actually changed to a red color because that's what I set it up to be. Another thing that you can use is you can actually turn off the layer. This is called visibility. When I do that, it looks like my outlet's deleted, but it's not. I've actually just turned off its visibility. I can turn it back on and on multiple times. So again, it makes it easy for us to manage any of the information we have on our drawings. And the last thing I want to talk about is going to be pretty much how I move around really quick. As some of you guys were drawing, you might have actually drawn off the screen, and you probably like zoomed in and out to try to find where you are. Well, you can see I'm not only zooming in and out, but I'm also moving the screen back and forth with this little black hand that pops up. To do that, ladies and gentlemen, or to use that, all you need to do is actually click down on the middle mouse button on your mouse, and when you click down and hold, you'll get this black button. You can move it around. It's very convenient to use this if you need to quickly center an object in the middle, like the ceiling light. Say it's over here and I want to work on it real quick. I can just click down the middle mouse button, and then I can zoom in, and I have my outlet right in the middle. So hopefully we've gone through a few tools that will help you use AutoCAD to its full potential. Remember, you can always pause, you can always restart this video in case you missed any of the answers. Thank you.